Hi guys, today we'll continue reading the books from shore to shore. Okay. Wait me a little bit. I'll just move the page. Okay, the king of walnut on the seashore. Hundreds of years ago, or more after the time of Alfred, the great king, there was a king of England named Canute. King Canute was a Dane, but the Danes were not so fierce and cruel then as they had been when they were at war with King Alfred. The great men and officers who were around King Canute were also praising him. "You are the greatest man that ever lived," one would say. Then another said, "Oh, King, there can never be another man so mighty as you." And another would say, "Great Canute, there is nothing in the world that dares to disobey you." The king was a man sense, and he grew very tired of hearing such foolish speeches. One day he was by the seashore, and his office were with him. There they were praising him as they were in habit of doing. He thought that now he could teach them a lesson, and so bade them sit in his chair on the beach close by the edge of the water. "I'm the greatest man in the world." "Am I the greatest man in the world?" he asked. "Oh, King," they cried, "there is no one so mighty as you. Do you do all things obey me?" he asked. There is nothing that dares to disobey you, O King," they said. The world bows before you and gives you honor. "Will the sea obey me?" "Yes," and he looked down at the little waves which were lapping the sand in his feet. The foolish officers were puzzled, but they did not dare say no. "Command it, O King, and it will obey you," says the one. "See," cried Canute, "I command you to come no farther. Waves, stop your roaring and do not dare to touch my feet." The tide came in just as the wave did. The water rose higher and higher. It came up around King's chair and splashed not only on his feet but also on his lower robe. His officers stood about him, alarmed, and wondered whenever he was mad. Then Canute took off his crown and threw it down upon the sand. "I shall never wear it again," he said, "and my men learned a lesson from why you have seen. There is the only one King who is all-powerful, and he who rules the sea and holds the ocean in hollow in his hand is he whom your oath to praise his servant above all others. If once you have stepped on an island, you'll never be quite the same. You may look as you looked the day before and go by the same old name. You must bustle down the street and shop. You may sit at home and sew. But you see blue water and willing schools, wherever your feet may go. You may chat with your neighbors of this and that, and close to your fire keep one you won't know why and can't say how, such as change upon you can. But once we have stepped on an island, you'll never be quite the same. All done. Wait a minute. Yes, wait. Okay, now we'll read the next stories. It's called All Done. As Sarah cut Captain hair on the front of the step, gathered his curls, sketching them on the fence and ground, still battered some hair around the porch as the dog watches. Why? asked Sarah. For the birds, said Sarah. They will use it for their nest. Later, we can look for the nest of curls, Sarah said later. Colin whispered to me as we spread his hair out. Sarah will stay. Sarah cut Papa's hair too. No one else saw, but I found him behind the barn, tossing the piece of hair into the wind for the birds. Sarah brushes my hair and ties it up in back with the rose velvet ribbon she had bought from Maine. She brushes hers long and free and tied it back too. And we stood side by side looking into the mirror. I looked taller like Sarah and tall and thin. And with my hair pulled out by, I look a little like her daughter, Sarah's daughter. And then it was time for singing. Sarah sang us a song we had never heard before as we sat on the porch. Insect buzzing in the grasses. It was called Summer is Icon in. And she taught it to us all, even Papa, who sang as if he had never stopped singing. Summer is a carrier on the sing cuckoo, cuckoo, cuckoo. What is summer? Asked Clara. He said it's sooner. The way Sarah had said it's summer, says Papa and Sarah at the same time. Sarah and I looked at each other. Summer was coming tomorrow, says Sarah. I want to see the sheep. You know, I never touches one. Never? Carmen sat down. Never, said Sarah. She smiled and leaned it back in her chair. But I touch seals, real seals. They are cool and slippery, and they slide through the water like fish. They can cry and sing, and sometimes they bark, a little like dogs. Sarah barked like a seal, and Luton and Nick came running from the barn to jump up on Sarah and lick her face and make her laugh. Sarah stroked them and scratched them in their ears, and it was quiet again. I wish I can touch a seal right now, asked Sarah, his voice soft in the night. So do I, said Sarah. She sighed, then she began to sing summer songs again, far off the field. A mare along sang too. The sheep made Sarah smile. She sank her finger into their thick, coarse wool. She talks to them, running from the lamb, letting them stroke her fingers. She names Mater and Lou. They sat down in the field beside them. and saying, "Summer is again in." Her voice drifted over the meadow grass, carried by the wind. She cried when we found the lamb that had died, and she shouted and shook her first at the turkey, buzzing that came from now where to eat it. No, she would let Cobble or me come near. And that night Papa went with a shovel to bury the sheep and a lantern to bring Sarah back. She sat on the porch alone. Nick crept up to lean against her knees after dinner. Sarah drew a picture to send home to Maine. She began to charcoal drawing of the field rolling like the zero. She drew a sheep whose ears were too big, and she drew a windmill. Windmill was my first word, says Papa. Papa told me so. Mine was flower, I said. What was yours, Sarah? Done, says Sarah. Done. As Papa looks up, "It Maine," says Sarah. "There are little rocks cliffs that raise up the edge of the sea, and there are hills covered with pine and squash trees green with needles. But Willer and I find the sand done all our town. It was soft and sparkling with bits of mica, and when we were little, we would slide down the dun into the water." Papa looks at the window. "We have no duns here," he said. Papa stood up. "Yes, we do," he said. He took the lantern and went out the door to the barn. "We do," asked Carol called after him. He ran ahead. Sarah and I followed. The dogs close behind. Next to the barn was Papa, made to hay for Betty, nearly half as tall as the barn, covered with covering to keep the rain from rotting in. Papa carried the wooden ladder from the barn and leaned it against the hay. "There," he smiled at Sarah. "Outdone." Sarah was very quiet. The dogs looked up at her, waiting. Seal brushes against her leg, her tail in the air. Carol reached over and took her hand. "It looks high up," he asked. "Are you scared, Sarah?" Scared, exclaimed Sarah. "You bet I'm not scared." She climbed the ladder and Nick began to bark. She climbed to the very top of the hay and sat looking down at us. Above, the stars were coming out. Papa piled the bed of loose hay below with his pitchfork. The light of the lantern made his eyes shine when he smiled up at Sarah. "Fine," called Papa. "Fine," said Sarah. She lifted her arms over her head and slid down into the soft hay. She lay laughing as the dog rolled beside her. "Wasn't it a good dun?" called Karen. "Yes," said Claire. "It's a fine dun." Claire and I climbed up and slid down, and Sarah did it 3 more times. At last, Papa slid down too, and the sky grew darker and the stars blinked like fireflies. We were covered with hay and dust, and we sneezed in the kitchen. Papa and I washed in the big wooden tub, and Sarah drew more pictures to send to William. One was of Papa, his curly hair and full of hay. She grew copper, sliding down the hay, his arms like Claire over his head. She looked at her drawing of the field for a long time. "Something is missing," she told Claire. something, and she put it away. Dear William, Sarah read to us by lantern light that night. Sliding down out done of the hay is most as fine as sliding down the sand dunes into the sea. God bless my as me as but his mouth formed the word I had hitherto outdone. Sarah Payne the Tall is a charming book that paints a picture of America live on the prairie in the late 80s. Read the entire book to find out if Sarah chose to stay. Wait. Dear Ollie, now I read you another story. It's called Ollie, the Stars and the Eagle. Ollie, the Stars and Seagulls. You could always count on Roya to do right things. When someone was watching, he never threw easier in school. When the teacher was looking, he never let the air out the other fellow bicycle tire, unless he was sure that they could not guess who did it. You could always count on Ryan to do good work. When it showed that his room was always tidy, unless you peeked it in his dresser drawer or under the bed. His school paper had good marks, at least one he brought home on summer. Ryan, Uncle Jack, who was an inventor, came for a visit. At first he thought Ryan was wonderful. Then he began to have surprise. There was a time, for instance, that Ryan and Uncle Jack were painting the canoe before a chemistry. First they sandpaper it all over the smooth out any rough spot, then patches the breaker and weak spot. They had sandpaper again. Uncle Jack was working on one side of the canoe and Ryan on the other. Now we are ready for the paint on the outside and finish on the inside, says Ryan. He started to get the blanket over knees out of his bag. Uncle Jack ran his hand over Ryan's side of the canoe. He nodded that all was smooth and ready until he came to the place just under the gunwale. What's this? Uncle Jack scooped it off a lump of chewing gum, a flake of varnish, and splitter of wood. There's another half hour working getting your side ready. But who's going to look under the gunwale? Asked Ryan. We done a good job. Where is shown? Uncle just stood and looked at Ryan. So that's your story. They slayed a lot of things. Ryan squinted. He thought Uncle Jack would say a lot more. Instead, his uncle changed the subject suddenly. Someday I'll take you for a plane ride. Of course, that was all right with Ryan. At the last day for the plane ride came, Ryan had to thought of plenty of places he would like to see from the air, but Uncle Jack had just one idea. We are going to fly over New York Harbor, he announced, over the Statue of Liberty. I seen that lots of time, right? Indeed, I've been there by ferry boat. I climbed way up to bacon that runs over the head, but the Statue of Liberty was that Uncle Jack had decided Ryan should see from the air, one of the ways to the airport. Uncle Jack talked about ferry against border. The French sculptor who made the statue in 1886. It's a great man to dream a statue which would hold such meaning of generous after generation of people in entire New York. harbor. It took skilled sculpture to make such a gigantic figure and keep it in beautiful proportion. It took a careful working man to get every detail correct. Yeah, agreed Ryan, who had heard all this before. You must have my field glasses to look down at the top of the statue when we fly over it, says Uncle John. Remember that in 1886, Baber never dreamed that people would fly over his statue. In those days, flying machines were just something to joke about. Harbin never expected anything but the stars and seagulls to look down at his statue, but you rise higher than the decks of a ship in the harbor. I bet he didn't bother much with the carving of the top of the statue, laughed Ryan. It's a good joke on him to fly over it and look down on the part he thought wouldn't show. Uncle Jack did not answer. He was busy turning up his plane for the flight. Soon they were up in the air, soaring over. Soon they in the air, soaring over New York Harbor. The busy tugboats looked as though they came from a toy store. The low-flying frightened looked as though boys then made soapboxes. The seagulls seemed like mosquitoes scooping around. Ryan remembered to use his field glasses when they flew over the Statue of Liberty. He grinned as the trick they were flying on the famous sculpture long ago, spying on what he thought would be out of sight. The plane circled several times. Ryan had a long, clear look at the statue. He couldn't fade. Uncle just smiled as he watched his nephew face in the mirror over the control. He knew what the boy was seeing. Every hair on the top of the curved head of the Statue of Liberty was as careful carving as French August Blondin at work in 1886 had known. The airplane was someday be carrying people with field glasses over the top of his statue. The great artist had done every bit of his work well, even the part that he thought only the stars and seagulls would ever see. Okay, this video ends here. I hope you had a great listening this from shore to shore. It's just a great book. Bye, guys.